Sit rep, folks. In mere minutes, multiple armored vehicles get shredded into blazing metal wrecks. We are seeing these brutal kill zones caught on camera daily across the entire front line. Intel logs show thousands of Russian armored losses since day one. But here is the tactical shift. Most of these rigs aren't taking hits from fighter jets or long-range missiles. They are getting gutted by drone-corrected artillery and small attack drones that cost a tiny fraction of the heavy targets they obliterate. You and I are looking at massive destruction here, but the speed is terrifying. We track a mechanized push, rolling up main battle tank leading, armored carriers loaded with infantry trailing behind. They strap on anti-drone cages. They run electronic jammers. These Russian crews roll out thinking they are fully prepared for a drone-heavy combat zone. But tactical gear does not equal survival. Miles before they even hit the zero line, Ukrainian recon birds already have eyes on them. As this convoy strings out across exposed dirt roads, every single tread mark gets locked as a live coordinate back at command. Just one rig strikes a mine, or slams the brakes at a bad angle. That entire assault axis immediately starts falling apart. Friendly artillery doesn't have to wipe the whole grid immediately. They just drop steel to stall the momentum and flush infantry out of their metal boxes. Right on cue, the attack drones swarm in. A standard combat push instantly flips into a brutal race between human reaction and absolute slaughter. We are analyzing a textbook mechanized assault, but drone feeds already have them painted. The Russian strike package groups up heavy armor taking point. Armored personnel carriers hugging their six, while ammo trucks and logistics rigs haul up the rear. It is a doctrine built for pure kinetic pressure. Point tanks are supposed to eat the first hits and breach wire, letting the carriers dump shock troops right into the trenches to seize the dirt. Rear supply lines are rolling close to keep the gunfight fed once rounds start flying. The mission brief is dead simple. They plan to punch right up to the Ukrainian trenches, drop assault units on tactical strongpoints, push deeper if the defense crumbles, or pop smoke and retreat down the exact same dirt track if casualties spike too hard. In this kind of mechanized warfare, timing is everything. Keep the throttle down, and you force the dug-in defenders to scramble. Hit the brakes too soon, and the whole op shatters. But for the defending Ukrainians, the kill chain does not actually start with a trigger pull. It starts with dead silent observation. High-altitude recon birds are already orbiting way before the Russian armor sniffs the front line, and their mission right now is not to draw first blood. Their job is profiling the strike package, calculating the exact spacing between those rolling targets, and spotting the high-value assets. See, a heavy battle tank on point telegraphs one specific assault strategy. A tight, heavy carrier cluster mid-column screams a totally different objective. While the treads churn dirt, these drone pilots are logging every meter live. They are clocking throttle shifts, minor course corrections, and those fatal seconds when convoy spacing shrinks into a cluster. This intel is gold. A strung-out convoy is basically impossible to defend under heavy fire. Let that lead armor push too fast, and it dies alone. If the supply tail drags, they get completely severed. These Russian tank crews honestly think they are just driving toward a trench network. In reality, their every inch is feeding straight into digital targeting grids. Every single metal hull is just a blinking dot on a kill screen. The eyes in the sky aren't guessing where they will go next. They are tracking it cold. That assault path stops looking like a tactical breakthrough and turns into a pre-sighted kill box. Down in the mud, Russian grunts are sweating over tree lines and immediate ambush risks. They watch the wood lines intensely, praying they do not hit anti-tank mines. They are trusting their steel plates and electronic countermeasures, but they are totally blind to their own footprint from 2,000 feet up. From the drone's optics, the convoy sequence, the vehicle gaps, and their cruising speed paint a highly predictable target pattern. Command analyzes that exact pattern before the first artillery shell drops. Right now, the battlefield is dead quiet. Diesels are roaring, the tactical comms remain perfectly calm, and the assault stays on bearing. But the absolute outcome of this firefight is already sealed. Stick with me here. One side is pushing dumb steel, while the other maps the slaughter. You and I need to ask one critical tactical question. When the kill chain activates, what's the primary target to shatter this mechanized assault? Do you hit the lead main battle tank to jam the advance? Or do you smoke an armored troop carrier to slaughter the infantry leading the charge? This single tactical call dictates if the formation holds or completely bleeds out. The initial push seems perfectly calculated right now, but these crews are driving blind straight into a fatal kill zone they cannot even see. Notice how the armor spreads out. On the tactical feed, the spacing looks strict. These drivers know bunching up catches a massive artillery barrage. Extending the convoy is a survival tactic. They want to stop one precision strike from wiping out multiple units. By the manual, it makes sense, on a front line swarming with artillery and drones. But out here in the dirt, lengthening the line, stretches their defensive umbrella way past its limit. Up front, the point tank sets a relentless pace. Troop carriers track right behind, with supply trucks dragging the rear. It creates a fragile steel chain crawling through the mud. Every gap in the dirt is a shield, but also a massive tactical vulnerability. If the vanguard takes fire, the trailing armor has seconds to decide push up or slam the brakes. Just 1 second of doubt shatters the entire assault plan. We are seeing heavy metal cope cages bolted onto hulls to block suicide. Other rigs are packing tactical jammers to scramble incoming remote-controlled drone frequencies. This crude armor drastically shifts the vehicle profiles, giving troops false confidence. The reality is, this defensive shield is totally scattered across the line. One squad rolls with high-tech jammers. The next runs bare bones. That mismatch means this entire column will snap at its weakest, least protected link. Hitting the open fields instantly paints a massive target on their backs. Rolling out of the tree lines leaves them completely naked against the flat terrain. Up on the drone feeds, heavy armor sticks out like blood on fresh snow. Thermal optics catch the roaring engines instantly. High-res cameras lock onto their tracks across the mud. The danger skyrockets the second they hit the brakes. Just tapping the brakes for rough terrain leaves every single crew stranded inside a pre-dialed artillery grid for way too long. Fast armor is tough to hit. Slower units are just sitting ducks out there. If the lead gunner swerves or stops, the whole rear guard has to compensate. That chain reaction bunches them up for 5 deadly seconds. Down inside those hulls, everyone is staring straight ahead. Platoon leaders are sweating the comms, scanning the dirt for anti-tank kill squads. They think spacing out keeps them alive. What they don't realize is they just outran their own air defense. Tactical mobile anti-aircraft units simply cannot cover everything. Electronic warfare domes cannot stretch across half a mile of scattered steel. Right now, no shots fired. Engines are screaming, and the assault looks totally solid. But the raw geometry of this battlefield is shifting against them. Stretching the formation spawns too many variables. An ambush up front won't even register with the guys dragging in the rear. Hitting the dead center chops the whole invasion force into stranded pockets. So let's look at this like a battlefield commander. With the convoy stretched wide across nowhere and defense systems mismatched, where does this entire advance finally fracture? Do you strike the point tank leading the charge? Or gut the middle to trap them into 2 desperate bleeding halves? The climax hits in a split second. One rig stalls in the worst possible spot, and the whole mechanized push starts to disintegrate. Pushing deep into the hot zone, the point element hits a patch of dirt that looks totally secure. No barricades on the optics. Clear skies above the turret. Then a massive shockwave rips straight up through the belly of the armor. An anti-tank mine vaporizes the tracks, violently slamming the entire advancing convoy to a halt. Listen up. The immediate effect? That lead vehicle dies, instantly plugging up this entire narrow transit corridor. One dead track creates a massive, brutal bottleneck. The armor pushing up behind it has to slam brakes, pivot, or try bypassing. But out here on this confined axis, there is zero room to maneuver. The tactical spacing we saw moments ago instantly compresses. That clean, disciplined assault geometry, completely gone under fire. Monitoring the live feed, overhead reconnaissance immediately shifts focus. They stop tracking the broader convoy vector. The operator locks dead onto the exact point of paralysis. That deadlined hull becomes the anchor for a brutal counterattack. Fresh grid coordinates get relayed to rear echelon heavy artillery instantly. A rapid armored thrust has just become a static, high-value reference point. These first incoming artillery barrages do not need direct kills. They just need to land close enough to force a panic reaction. Hot shrapnel shreds into steel. Massive shock waves rip the dirt. You do not need a direct catastrophic hit to ignite absolute chaos. Close proximity blasts will easily shatter tracks, blow tires, or shred optics. More crucially, they force these trapped crews into rushed, panicked choices. As the bombardment escalates, we see some rigs throwing it in reverse, while others desperately ram forward. In this bloodbath, that critical spacing completely disintegrates. An assault force built for speed is now violently trapped inside its own wreckage. Tactical nets jam up. Orders contradict. The orchestrated assault degenerates into a desperate brawl just to clear the road. Inside those metal boxes, the dismount infantry feel the slaughter coming before hearing the call. Once this armor stalls out and the heavy bombardment zeroes in, sitting in those hulls is suicide. Field commanders have to order an emergency dismount. Ramps drop. Infantry scatter into the dirt, sprinting for ditches, blasted craters, or any slight terrain depression that gives a shred of cover. This is the ultimate danger zone. The second boots hit the ground. That armor plating is useless. These troops now have only speed and raw terrain keeping them alive. Looking at the footage, we catch heat signatures, idling engines blazing alongside desperate infantry scrambling across the open. A hard-hitting mechanized platoon is now just a chaotic, bleeding cluster of stalled iron and highly vulnerable dismounts. Incoming artillery actively shapes the kill box. Salvos are dropping in precise box patterns to block retreat, not just annihilate. Deadlined armor chokes the vanguard. Sustained fire completely cuts off the rear. This entire convoy is completely immobilized. They are pinned down hard. Right here, the offensive push has totally collapsed. The primary mission objective vanishes. Now, it is purely a desperate fight to survive this barrage. The combat zone fractures into isolated pockets. Cut-off crews are fighting blind, no longer operating as a unified military force. Let's ask ourselves a tactical question. Which phase here is actually more lethal? Is it while the heavy armor is still tearing forward with throttles wide open? Or is it right here when troops bail out of their rigs, scrambling across zero-cover ground while taking heavy fire? Now the escalation hits. First-person view drones swarm the grid, turning a stalled convoy into a massacre. Once the big guns trap this formation in terrible spots, a wave of low-altitude killer drones sweeps right into the fray. They are no longer hunting fast-moving combat vehicles in a tight formation. They are stalking wounded steel, stranded carriers, and panicked crews scrambling for control. Any piece of armor losing momentum is an incredibly soft target. A rig violently reversing under fire cannot dodge a vertical strike. Watch closely. This first FPV drone acquires lock on a crippled troop carrier right at the choke point. It glides in low and fast. This shallow vector completely avoids the primary defensive machine gun arcs. A brutally surgical hit. The payload detonates across the top armor, pouring thick smoke straight out the commander's hatch. Even if the initial shelling failed to outright kill this beast, this payload guarantees it is permanently out of the war. Instantly, a second drone vectors toward another unit desperately backing down the supply route. The pilot maintains a hard visual lock, dynamically correcting as the driver swerves through wreckage. The tactical objective is not random destruction. The mission is totally erasing mobility. One flank strike will snap a track, instantly bricking the rig and jamming the route for everyone else. With each stalled wreck, this kill zone shrinks. What stands out now is exactly how these drone operators manipulate the clock. Let's break this down. FPVs have strict battery limits, making every airborne second absolutely critical. Operators won't waste precious payload on a burning wreck. If a hull is scorched, it holds zero tactical value. The pilot pivots, hunting fresh armor in range. This relentless targeting keeps the pressure absolutely brutal. We are seeing strike patterns designed with one logic: isolate and destroy. Knocking out the lead stops the advance dead. Hitting the center snaps the convoy into two isolated pockets. Once that middle is severed, the rear element cannot support, and the vanguard has nowhere to retreat. The immediate result is sheer panic across the entire axis. Drivers freeze. Gunners frantically scan the skies. Infantry scramble for cover under extreme stress. Raw combat footage dropping from Ukrainian drone squads, especially Magyar's unit, shows brutal sequences where entire columns get wiped out in devastating succession. The kill rhythm is deliberate. First impact triggers fire. A second bird exploits a new gap in the chaos. A third drone sweeps in to guarantee that crippled armor is permanently reduced to scrap. This isn't random fire. The tempo is relentless. Down in the mud, the psychological terror compounds. Dismounted troopers now face lethal, continuous strikes plunging from above. Tank crews face a grim choice. Stay buttoned up tight, or pop the hatches to actually see. Neither call guarantees survival. A closed hatch leaves you blind. An open one invites sudden death. As these FPVs keep hammering, the battlefield violently shifts character. What started as a heavy mechanized push shatters into vicious, isolated engagements around dead vehicles. Every single strike severely narrows survival options for remaining crews. Escape routes vanish. Comms devolve into total chaos. By this phase, the original mission objective is completely dead. This operation is strictly about survival and desperate extraction. You and I need to look at the wider tactical picture. When an armored convoy is bleeding at choke points while drones swarm overhead, should command push fresh reinforcements forward to try and stabilize the sector? Or does that just feed more targets into an already controlled kill zone? The breaking point hits when drone cages buckle under relentless strikes, and support rigs become massive explosive triggers. Look at the stalled armor. Several tanks sport welded metal grills, specifically designed to defeat incoming FPV warheads. At first glance on the intel feed, these steel grids look solid above the turret and engine deck. The first drone dives in, striking that outer steel layer and violently detonating. The shaped charge bends rebar and sprays shrapnel outward, but the hull holds intact. Thick smoke rises, and the terrified crew likely believes the armor worked. Seconds later, another drone approaches. Now, that structure is already severely compromised. Huge gaps remain where solid steel once perfectly aligned. This second strike doesn't need a perfect angle. It simply threads the needle into the fresh weak point ripped open by the first blast. The warhead slips through the distorted frame, punching significantly deeper. Hellish flames erupt from the turret ring. That brief illusion of safety vanishes entirely. This relentless 1-2 punch fundamentally alters the battlefield psychology. A single layer of welded steel simply cannot cut it when kamikaze drones hunt in waves. If a vehicle survives that initial blast, it immediately becomes the primary painted target for the follow-up. Operators above don't have to guess which armor plate has been softened. They track mangled steel and smoke trails, adjusting their dive. The threat skyrockets when soft support trucks get trapped in that same zone. Ammo carriers and heavy fuel tankers usually idle just behind the frontline armor, holding for the signal to advance. In a fast, fluid assault, they supply the critical lifeblood keeping the momentum alive. But trapped in a stalled corridor, they become catastrophic liabilities. An FPV locks onto a logistics truck stacked with artillery shells. The impact instantly ignites the stored munitions. The resulting detonation dwarfs the drone's tiny warhead. Devastating secondary shockwaves violently ripple across the entire sector. White-hot debris scatters across neighboring armor. Raging fires spread rapidly along every exposed surface. Shrapnel aggressively showers the surrounding concrete and soil. We're watching the scene become a hazard zone where remaining crews simply cannot stand still. Hear those engines screaming. Drivers are desperately trying to outrun the intense heat and falling shrapnel. Pinned-down infantry are now facing a brutal wall of expanding flames. This tactical corridor, already taking heavy artillery and drone strikes, has become a total death trap. Staying put for 60 seconds guarantees a catastrophic wipeout. Forget the original mission. That objective is completely dead. We aren't looking at how to push forward a few hundred meters anymore. The only grim calculation left is extracting the survivors. A busted tank clogs the front. A blazing transport threatens the center. Rearguard elements face a brutal choice. Blindly reverse under heavy fire, or try navigating tight terrain around smoldering wreckage. Field commanders have seconds to decide. Pushing fresh armor forward might recover disabled rigs or lay suppressive fire. But it also feeds fresh meat straight into a pre-sighted kill box. Ordering a tactical fallback saves remaining assets, but retreating under heavy fire bleeds troops fast. This mechanized column is no longer combat effective. It is just broken steel and desperate men clawing their way out of a closing trap. You and I need to look hard at the question this slaughter raises. When an armored spearhead gets pinned down and the formation shatters, do you immediately order a full withdrawal to save whatever is left? Or do you throw more troops into the grinder, hoping to rescue stranded armor and regain momentum? I have seen one disabled rig turn a massive, confident push into a blazing corridor of twisted steel. Let's review the whole tactical sequence. What stands out isn't one massive blast, but the brutal chain reaction dragging an entire heavy column down into a total death spiral. A single minefield created the fatal choke point. Then, enemy recon drones locked onto the grid. Heavy artillery barrages pinned the armor, forcing crews to scatter. Then, FPV drones swarmed in to mop up the crippled remnants. The critical breaking point hit when the convoy halted. Ground commanders faced a nightmare choice: ram forward through the firestorm or blindly reverse through chaos. The second those troops abandoned their armored hulls, any tactical edge vanished. Moving into the next quarter, the real issue is not just how much Russian armor gets blown to pieces. The real test is if Russia can adapt convoy doctrines, deploy better close-in air defense, and actually move under drone-infested skies. Will frontline units be forced to scatter into smaller squads, or can command invent a tactic to smash this layered defense network? These upcoming firefights will definitely prove if this was a bloody fluke, or a permanent shift in how modern mechanized warfare survives against drone swarms. Sound off in the comments below. Hit like, share this intel, and subscribe to Military Force for hard-hitting, frontline breakdowns of this massive clash between heavy armor and drones.